Welcome to Four Favorites, brought to you by the Quiet on Set podcast. I'm your host, Ewan, and today I'm joined by the Intercut podcast host, Zach Shevich. So, welcome, Zach. Glad to have you.
Yeah, glad to be back here with you, chatting movies, chatting some favorite movies. It's the right time of year to be doing this, I think.
Exactly. So, Four Favorites is our show where we invite a guest and we talk about, well, four of their favorites to a specific theme, genre, or subject. And this month, in the spooky month of October, what better time would there be to talk about some horror films? And that's exactly what we'll do. We'll talk about four of your favorite horror films, but it's always very hard to make a list like this because there's always big exclusions, stuff that you have to cut out to get others in. So, Zach, maybe let's kick it off with a bunch of honorable mentions that didn't make it onto your final list.
Yeah, sure. Well, when you asked me to put together my four favorite horrors, like the thing about putting together any kind of favorites list is it's not just like the things that are your favorites, but they are kind of like a representation of you and
Exactly, yeah.
something. And like I don't know, at a certain point, I do think it'd be boring if I came back with like Jaws, which is one of my
Right.
favorite movies ever, but it's also like one of the great movies inarguably in film
Hmm.
history. So, that's a movie that I could have totally picked and is probably going to be like a honorable mention for me, but it I just thought it would be a little bit boring to discuss like, oh yeah, Spielberg, he kind of invented the creature suspense thing here.
Yeah.
There's also stuff like Get Out. I'd even throw Nope from Jordan Peele on my honorable mentions, films that I think are great and are really interesting modern horror films. But I think I'm not like unique in my adoration for Jordan Peele's films, and there's probably people who could share a more insightful or like heartfelt response to those movies than I could. I also considered Shaun of the Dead just as probably my favorite horror comedy, but I wanted to stick with more like things that actually scare me, right? Like I
Hmm.
could have picked something like Black Swan. That's another thing that I guess horror adjacent that I like, but it's
Hmm.
not a film that I find unsettling. I just find it interesting and thrilling. So
Right.
I tried to stick with the things that actually kind of disturbed and upset me. I could throw out a couple other honorable mentions to films like Existence and The Fly, but we will be
Right.
getting to Cronenberg, so I don't know if I need to mention like every movie he's ever made.
I mean, it's a great list when we get to see a bit more of your character through your list, of
Hmm.
your personality, and the ones that I guess are the most well known people already know. So we've had a bunch of glimpses into more genre and historic horror films within the series. So I'm glad to see that continued with you. And I feel like the first film on your list is kind of, with your outfit right now, it fits really well with the first movie that we'll talk about, Philip Kaufman's 1978 film Invasion of the Body Snatchers that I watched for the first time this morning as well. And I
Awesome.
think you teased that it is very scary. And I agree. It's
Yeah.
it's one of the scariest films I've ever seen. It's so scary.
Yeah, but it's also scary in a way that's not necessarily like what modern horror is scary as, right?
Right.
Like it's not giving you these kind of like horrific images or like jump scares or whatever. It's much more of like a psychological terror about this looming threat around you, and it's
Yeah.
almost kind of like a spy thriller,
Hmm.
except that like it's about the presence of other beings, other types of non-humans. But yeah, I mean, there's that thriller aspect to it of like, are they going to figure this out? Are they going to get found out? Are they going to be safe? But I think one of the things that I love about Invasion of the Body Snatchers is that it works in so many different ways, just even as like a social satire of the ways
Hmm.
in which people kind of just go through their routines mindlessly. It's very funny. The romance aspect of it too works, and like when you do get to that ending, it has this added element of tragedy in that like it does give you almost this like this glimmer of hope, and then
Hmm.
it just wipes that clean and makes sure that you're going to leave the movie in some sort of despair. Ultimately, I think those are the things that I find frightening or upsetting or unsettling, at least, is sort of the more like psychological terrors of a movie like Invasion of the Body Snatchers.
I gotta say, your list is by far the scariest I've had to deal with so far. I had to catch up with a bunch of them as well. It was very scary, and I didn't even know that that final shot is from that movie. It
Yeah,
was a
because
bit
it's
of a
like an
surprise to me.
iconic like meme or whatever, but it
Yeah,
like when you see it in context, it is terrifying. And like
yeah.
even the more dated aspects of the movie, I think don't take away from how disturbing that
Mhm,
feeling is. I guess ultimately it's like, are you more scared of the mythological horrors, like the zombie ideas, or like uh
mhm.
whatever monsters and horror creatures you can think of, or is it the existential dread that scares you? And I think if you can take one thing from my four picks, it's the existential dread, which really keeps me up at night.
It definitely is that, and I think that's a nice tie over to the next film on your list from Darren Aronofsky,
Yes.
and it's a controversial film. Some people swear by it, like you, they really like it, and others hate it.
Yep.
I liked it. I enjoyed it quite a
Yeah.
bit. I thought a good concept, but it's exactly that existential thing
Mhm.
yet again, right?
Yeah, and I guess I decided to put this one on the list because I know there are a lot of people who vehemently hate this one, and I
Hmm.
just want to like stick my flag in and the side of like this is a really good, effective movie. I'm not
Hmm.
enough of a I'm not a religious Bible person at all, so I can't tell you how it works, or whether or not it works as some sort of like religious allegory, but simply as a film about the terror of somebody sitting on your sink if you haven't yet braced it. just just the idea of like her life spinning out of control and her having absolutely no control over the momentum of that happening. I just
Hmm.
found Mother to be a really visceral experience. I don't know if I've felt more physically uncomfortable during a movie than I did the first time I sat in the theater and watched that one. Cause it's like it's just a kind of unrelenting in the punishment that they put Lawrence's character through. And I think with me, I have this sort of social anxiety where like I really it's a big struggle for me if I can't like just give myself breaks
Hmm.
occasionally. Like I just need to sit and breathe and recollect my thoughts and recollect my energy. And I feel like this is a movie that just like is about what it's like when you're pulled from thing to thing and can't just like take a break from it. Um I don't know. I find this one so disturbing to like my core. And there's just a few like moments where you feel I think Darrenofsky as a filmmaker is really able to sweep you up in the moment. I think
Hmm.
Requiem for a Dream is another one of his films in which like you get that sort of like swirling chaos feeling. And there's something almost like that leaves you as a viewer helpless to the horror that you see. So, yeah, I just I think I was very impressed that I felt so powerless as an audience member by in this
Yeah.
movie. And I don't know if I've ever really felt that way watching a film before.
No, it reminded me very much of Shiva Baby and the first
Mhm.
experience I had with that film. Just how inescapable the whole situation is, and I agree. Probably the most one of the most upsetting things in the film is that sync moment, that repeated. It is traumatizing.
Yeah,
Uh,
she's trying and you know what it does? It feels like a bad dream where, like,
yeah,
you're looking for something and you just never can find it and no one will help you, and, like, that just frustration of, like, "Oh, if only I know exactly what I need, but I can't get it." It's that in movie form, and maybe that sounds terrible, and I
yeah.
understand why a lot of people don't want to experience that. I was so taken away by the fact that I could be transported that way.
Yeah, I think it is something about, I guess, starting out in a quite grounded way and then escalating it quite quickly. That some people might not connect with it and feel like it's over the top. But I think that was essentially what honed in the point right by the end of the film. It was
Mhm.
really this inescapable experience. But yeah, that's Darren Aronofsky's film Mother from 2017. Next up, in true intercut fashion, of course, there can't be a list of four films with four films on it. There has to be a tie and a fifth one mentioned. This, I guess, another film coming after this that we'll mention, but between two of Cronenberg's classics, Scanners and Videodrome, you couldn't decide which one should make the cut onto your list. So why
Yeah.
is it so hard to decide between those two? What makes them so great?
I don't know. These are just like excellent, excellent Cronenberg body horror films, and it's hard for me to choose between the two. Scanners is the one that I saw more recently, and it comes earlier in
Hmm.
his filmography, and I think there's just a really great energy to the film in the sense that like I think a lot of our modern film culture is about like these expanded worlds and these lores and like knowing all the backstories and stuff like that. And I love how Cronenberg just kind of throws you in here. Like the
Hmm.
opening scene is this apparent demonstration of these sort of telekinetic abilities, but you don't even get to see the demonstration go according to plan. It starts out, it ends up not going well. It ends up being the iconic like heads blasting moment.
Hmm.
And from there, it's just like the spilling out of chaos as there's like a fight over like the future of mankind essentially.
Hmm.
I don't know. I think I just really appreciate how no frills and energetic this film felt. It was a rare experience for me in that I'm often not interested in diving deeper into a world, but it
Hmm.
is kind of sparing in its details in a way that leaves you asking questions and leaves you curious. And plus, they've just got these like subtle elements of body horror, a lot of it sold just through looks and glances and actors that kind of like shake to give you the sense that they're trying really hard to do telekinetic abilities. I think it just like there's just a really cool energy to the film. I just thought it was cool, man. This is like a very very cool movie that has a lot of like moments that sort of I will think of in flashes and get like a slight chill down my spine. Cronenberg is very, very good at that. I again like the types of things that disturb me are less like the mythological and the fanciful, but like this sort of body horror, the manipulation of the human body, and like the way in which it's sort of like you see like the veins popping and it just you feel like your own veins. I don't know if I've ever felt my own veins, but I definitely did watching this movie. You feel it, man. It's like a roller coaster. So I really like Scanners. I think I enjoy that one the most. But I found myself revisiting Videodrome quite a bit, his 1983 follow-up, which is more of a commentary on the entertainment industry and sees James Woods' character, as who he plays like a TV programmer, and he kind of like becomes one with technology in a way.
Yeah.
I think Cronenberg maybe had a bit more budget going into this one. I don't know if that for sure, but like he seems like he's experimenting a lot more with just this sort of disturbing visuals and like taking things that are like almost comfortable and making them uncomfortable. The like
Mm.
pulsating TV is so like weird and different and only from could come from the mind of a guy like Cronenberg. A lot of things that have stuck with me in this movie. So I don't know. I think this was the first time you watched either of them, right? Which one stuck out to you more?
I did watch Scanners just before we hopped on this call. But Videodrome I've seen
Okay.
a couple of years ago. So it's not as present in my mind story wise, but I think both of them, Scanners for sure, is also going to stay in my mind just because it has those timeless, iconic shots where a lot of the stuff is used with just effects trickery, right? With
Mm-hmm.
makeup and stuff like that. He really creates these worlds that you can easily engage in, and just stands out, and he gives his actors a lot of room to with their performances as well. And I think that can easily go into a silly performance that you can't really buy, but somehow it in those two films, for me at least, it really worked in both of them, and I was entranced in the worlds he created as well. So both of I think I would prefer Scanners over Videodrome as well, but maybe
Mm-hmm.
that's just recency bias. But
They're both
but
great
yeah,
movies.
they're both great movies. I watched Scanners on the Criterion channel. I think the other one's not streaming anywhere, at least for me, but a great pick. A lot of the films that we talk about on these four favorite videos are actually on the Criterion channel. So it's nice to get that
Nice.
in use. There's a lot of like classics up there, and they look great as well. Look and sound great as well. But yeah, that's Cronenberg. We are technically at 4 movies now, but we'll allow a fifth one that's
Sneak one
appearing
more in.
slowly in the mist. With the mist from Frank Darabont, a filmmaker who hasn't made a lot of movies, but pretty much all of them really have a place in somewhere in pop culture. With
Mhm.
Shawshank Redemption, I think still being the highest rated film on IMDb, and he also got The Green Mile, and then here even further into the horrors, we got the Stephen King short story adaptation of The Mist. And I was surprised. I hadn't seen this one before. I mean, I think I had it on DVD, but I hadn't watched it. And
Mhm.
I gotta say, it's surprising how bloody this movie is. How gruesome and a lot of like the creature stuff as well. So I
Yeah.
feel like there's a tendency that you try to that you go towards like good good VFX. Not good at VFX. I think those are maybe a bit dated, but all
Yeah.
the practical stuff.
Yeah, yeah, and this is definitely, like, the most traditional horror pick, I think, on my list until you get towards the end of the film. I do think
Yeah,
it's a very effective sort of suspense, claustrophobia movie about,
yeah.
this town where this, dangerous mist, floats in, and people who go into the mist die, and then a bunch of people get trapped in this grocery store, and I think there's sort of like this Lord of the Flies kind of like who's in charge here, what's the plan element. That's really
Mhm.
fun. I do like those types of stories that ultimately it's like it becomes about how do people act around other people, are people the real danger, but it's more than that too, right? Like there's also
Mhm.
this lurking threat out there. I think the way that it plays out is very fun. The characters are very memorable. There's some really strong, smaller performances in this one. I think I remember Andre Brower particularly standing out. But I think the thing about The Mist that ultimately makes it on a different level and is why I have it here happens in its last few minutes, and like that's why I wanted to put this pick towards the end to spoiler warning everybody, because I think we have to talk about how The Mist ends if we're going to talk about why The Mist is so damn terrifying.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'll put a spoiler warning up until we're not talking about it anymore, but certainly it has to be mentioned. It's quite a shocking ending.
That moment when like the family has decided they will rather take their fate into their own hands than deal with what's out there, like you feel like that's sort of a sad ending, but you have no idea how sad it can get
Yeah.
until the military rolls in and saves Thomas Jane after he's killed his whole family. It is just again like talking about those existential terrors, just this idea of like thinking you're doing the right thing only to be very painfully and suddenly told that you have not, that you have literally endangered and killed your entire family.
Yeah.
It's so sadistic and so fucked up and so like I almost don't understand how this movie was greenlit. Um but I love that it does was because it is so dark. I don't know if I can think of a darker ending than this one.
I mean, I was surprised that it actually goes through and him killing
Mhm.
literally his son
Yeah, it's
was so
children.
incredible. Yeah, it's so dark and it's
Oh,
so quick as well. Feel like the ending is also like there's not a lot that happens time wise. It really happens fast. So
mhm.
it just leaves you with this really sharp gut punch.
Yeah,
It's yeah, hard movie to watch.
exactly.
When it comes to the ending, especially.
I want my horror movies to feel like I've just been mugged, like, to feel like somebody saw me on the street and beat me up. I want to be
Yeah.
devastated physically and emotionally at the end of a horror movie, and, The Mist certainly goes for it, and I haven't been able to shake it, you know? It's I don't know. It's solid. It's very solid. It's also honestly better than I remembered it when I revisited it because I think that element of like the deliberating over what to do and the panic over like there are no good options is well done. But yeah,
Mhm.
man, that ending is that's an all-timer.
Yeah, I think it's also mysterious enough that the mist is causing a bunch of stuff, maybe
Mhm.
accelerate the human component that gets kind of out of
Yeah.
hand as well, and that aspect I think works quite well overall in the film. And I always wrote this one off as this I guess, limited space, a horror film that
Mhm.
has a bunch of people in a supermarket because the trailers were kind of cheesy, how I remembered them. But like when I saw them like 10 years ago, maybe. I'm glad that I now got to watch this one because it's certainly worth being on your list for sure.
Crazy that this is the last film that Frank Darabont has directed. He did the pilot for The Walking Dead and spent
Yeah.
many years in a lawsuit trying to get more money for The Walking Dead. And
Hmm.
then he's done like this show called Mob City, but like this is like an all-timer director and he's kind of just chilling, it seems like.
It's 15 years. It's crazy long. Although there's quite a big time span between all of his films, but not that much. But maybe we'll get another one out of him with half of the cast of The Walking Dead again.
Yeah, maybe. He seems happy sitting on that Walking Dead money.
I think that's it for your four favorites. For those of you watching, don't forget to let us know what your four favorite horror films are in the comments below. And don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Zach, where can people find more from you?
You can follow me on social medias at Z Shevich, Zshevich, or check out Intercut Pod on socials and on YouTube as well. We'll have some spooky season recommendations coming shortly too.
And of course, the must watch of the weekend must watch.
Yes, Weekend Must Watch streams every Monday, so
Yes.
whatever weekly recommendations you need, we got them.
I'm always there to catch up with what I should be watching.
Yeah, we appreciate that.
But yeah, thanks so much for joining us, and we'll see you soon.